Hey, what's up? How you doing? Great? That's good. Let's just ignore the fact that I have a body and I'm not just a floating head. Now, you clicked on this video for one reason: to learn how to play the 10 power spike guy, Yasuo the Unforgiven. Now, in case you probably don't know, I'm a certified Yasuo main with around 1.3 million mastery points, and I'm a Diamond 4, so you know everything I say is legit, and I definitely know how to play the game. Please believe me, why would I lie to you? Anyway, without further ado, let's dive right into my juicy guide on how to play Yasuo. Now, before we start the guide, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new here, and tell me if you want more content like this in the future, or just want more of the funny content I do. It really helps, and for the sake of most of you who probably know about Yasuo and just want to get to the juicy part, I've put in some timestamps so that you don't have to listen to information you're already aware of. And with that out of the way, let's begin. An Ionian of deep resolve, Yasuo is an agile swordsman who wields the air itself against his enemies. As a proud young man, he was falsely accused of murdering his master. Unable to prove his innocence, he was forced to slay his own brother in self-defense. Even after his master's true killer was revealed, Yasuo still could not forgive himself for all he had done, and now wanders his homeland with only the wind to guide his blade. Now, on paper, that sounds awful, and his backstory sounds kinda sad. So are the other 140 plus champions in league, so I say he's not that different. Yasuo is a melee champion classified under the assassin and fighter class. These are called slayers. Slayers are champions that tend to lack high-end burst damage and lack most ways of getting close to high priority targets, but are instead armed with defensive situational abilities to help them survive in long extended fights and have extreme sustained damage to fight even very tanky opponents. Other examples of slayers are Fiora and Jax. Yasuo's passive is called Way of the Wanderer, and it has two parts to it, the first being Intent and the other being Resolve. Intent increases Yasuo's crit chance by 150% but reduces his crit strike by 10%, and he gains 0.4% bonus attack damage for every 1% crit chance above 100%. This means that if you buy an item that has 20% crit chance on it, Yasuo will instead get 50% crit chance. This allows him to build only 2 crit items to get his 100% crit chance power spike. Building more crit items will only increase his AD after the 100% mark, so buying more crit items is sometimes not necessary. The second part, Resolve, is measured by Yasuo's resource bar, which grants him flow. Yasuo doesn't use mana or energy, but moving grants flow, which fills up Yasuo's resource bar. At max flow, damage from a champion or monster briefly gives Yasuo a shield. This is really useful when you're going in for a trade. Also, flashing grants flow too, since you're technically still moving. Yasuo's Q is called Steel Tempest. Yasuo thrusts his sword, dealing physical damage in its path, and gives him a stack that lasts for 6 seconds. While at 2 stacks, his next Q fires a ranged whirlwind that deals the same damage and knocking off targets for 1 second. This ability is considered like a normal attack, so it can crit and apply on-hit effects like Blow of the Rune King, Rage Blade, Wit's End. You get the idea. Its CD and cast time can also be reduced with more attack speed and can be interrupted by CC. You can also use this ability with his E to strike in a circle instead of a straight line, which we'll talk about later. Yasuo's W is called Wind Wall, and as the name says, Yasuo throws a drifting wind wall at the direction of your cursor that blocks all enemy projectiles for 4 seconds. This doesn't include tower shots and abilities that don't travel in time, aka beams. By the way, this ability is not OP. Riot should buff this immediately, and that's not just me being biased, it's just a fact. Yasuo's E is called Sweeping Blade. Yasuo dashes through a target, dealing magic damage, and grants 25 bonus damage for the next use of this ability, stacking up to 50%. This ability has a 6-second cooldown for every target dashed on, and it has this little white indicator showing when you can dash on the target again. As said before, you can combine your E with your Q to perform a circle-like Steel Tempest, but remember to E first, then Q if you want to perform this action. This is also the ability that activates my inner monkey brain and makes me want to dash with no intended reason, because I like the feeling of moving very fast from one spot to another, because, well, with the dash. Yasuo's R or ult is called last breath because it's probably the last thing you'll be doing, since once this ability is done, you're either dead or your opponent is dead. You dying is more likely, I think. Yasuo teleports to an airborne enemy, holding them in the air for an additional second and dealing physical damage to them upon landing. Yasuo also gains max flow, and his crit strikes ignore 50% bonus armor for 15 seconds. This ability cannot be interrupted, meaning the moment you cast this ability on an airborne target, the animation will still continue even if you get CC'd or pull back or just end up dying. This ability also has a circle which indicates how many people you can ult at a time. As shown here, you can ult up to 3 people or more depending on how many are knocked up or where you place your cursor on your screen. If you are ulting 3 people, make sure to put your cursor in the middle of them so that you ult all 3 of them and not just ult 2 and look like an idiot like me. Yasuo is mostly played in the mid lane and has to be one of the most aggressive champions in the game because of his ability to go in for quick trades and almost take no damage in return because of his perfectly balanced passive. His kit makes it really easy for you to almost fight blindly in most cases and almost not get punished for it. This is one of the reasons I love Yasuo, because it allows me to think very well how I'm going to go in for a trade or kill without me having to think if I'm going to survive or not, and it just gives me that overall safety needed as a squishy melee champ. When in lane, you definitely want to abuse the power of your passive to the max, as it is your bread and butter mechanic for trading and fighting. Try and think like the enemy laner and ask yourself, would I want to fight Yasuo with his shield up? Obviously the answer is no, because you just win most of the time. That's why most range laners will abuse their range and try and get your shield down as soon as possible. Most of the time, the enemy laner walking up to get rid of your shield can lead to a kill, because it means they walk up in lane, and that means they move closer to you. This allows you to get in range for your E and just auto Q them to death or get their summoner spells. Another thing to take note of is the amount of minions you have in lane. The more minions in lane, the more options you have for a play. Basically, choose wisely when you decide to go in, because having minions around is cool and all, but not having minions sucks, and having too many minions can also suck. This is because once you attack an enemy with minions nearby, the minions will focus their aggro on you, and while a few minions don't deal that much damage, having to take a lot of damage from minions is not the best idea for a trade. From my experience, I always go in for a trade when my passive is up, just cause it's the safest play to have at the end of the day. Most Yasuo players play a bit more aggressive, but that can be risky for other people. Kinda like high risk, high reward. So play what suits you the most. Now, for items and runes, it's kind of straightforward in most cases. All you have to do is get 2 or 3 crit items for your 100% crit chance spike, and then build situational items depending on the matchup. When you're up against a hard poke lane, I suggest going Second Wind and Doran Shield, because it gives you the most sustain you can get in a poke matchup, but just matchups that you lose a lot of trades. For melee matchups, going Doran's Blade and Bone Plate is your best bet. Alongside with your passive, Bone Plating becomes the best rune you can go against melee matchups, since it increases your survivability a lot in lane. Lethal Tempo and Conqueror are your best choices for Yasuo. I lean towards Lethal Tempo more, because remember that Yasuo's Q, CD, and cast time can be reduced based on your attack speed, and Lethal Tempo helps a lot with that. Conqueror used to be his best until the changes made to Lethal, which just made Yasuo a lot more aggressive in lane, but personal preference is always allowed. Here are some of the items that I use on Yasuo for all situations. Feel free to use any of these, or just think of a crazy build yourself, because you aren't bound to the rules of society and you just want to let loose and show everyone that you're not a crazy person that deserves to be put in an asylum and you're perfectly sane. Or don't, but use what's right for you in your matchups. Now it's time for my tips and tricks from my 3-year collective experience of playing only Yasuo, because I have no life. Please send help. For my first tip, let's talk about Yasuo's E, because it's a big part of Yasuo's kit, if not it's the most important part of his kit, which makes him Yasuo. His E has a fixed distance, which means wherever you're standing and no matter how close you are to a target, you will always go the max distance. This also means that you can use enemies or monsters to dash through specific walls or terrain on the map. This is a very nice mechanic, and it allows allows you to sneak in surprise attacks when your laner least expects it, or just get away for a cheeky escape. Now let's talk about Yasuo's Q, the only ability you need to care about since it's your main source of damage. Because without it, how the hell are you gonna miss skill shots? Yasuo's Q, as said before, has a cast time, but a very short one. This means that you can flash during the cast time to change the position of where you want your Q to land, therefore increasing the range of the Q, or just moving to a different angle. Now for Yasuo's W, this balanced ability not only blocks all projectiles, but it can also give vision depending on where you place it. If used correctly, this can be used as a substitute ward for a short amount of time, just so that you can see what's behind the wall and catch peeping toms off guard. It also has a fixed distance, so try not to wind well in someone's face, because you won't be blocking anything, and that includes your own death. Now in case you have been listening the entire vid, you probably heard me talk about Yasuo's ult last breath, and I said that his R resets all the stacks that you had present. But what if I told you there's a way around that? Oh my god, there is? Yes, and I'm gonna tell you. That's right, Keyblade, Beyblade, all the good stuff right here and ready to eat. I mean, learn. There are lots of Yasuo combos that you can learn that really complete your gameplay as a Yasuo main. And honestly, once you master these combos, you would most likely always use them in every game. Kind of like a drug addiction, but without the drugs and more of Yasuo and Hasaki. First, let's start with the easiest combo, the extended ult combo. Basically, by extend, you're not extending the duration of the ult, but rather extending the duration of which your target is airborne. Now this can mean doing one last auto attack before your ult, or just waiting for a bit for your ult to keep them in the air as long as possible. It's not a big difference, but the small time and auto counts. Now let's talk about the first combo I mastered, the air blade. This has to be the #1 reason I still play Yasuo to this day. It's just so cool when you pull it off, and it makes me feel like I'm the main protagonist of an anime for 2 seconds. This is where you can technically still keep your Q stacks even when you ult. Essentially, what you're doing is pressing Q before you ult. And I don't mean Q then ult, I mean EQ then you ult. Fortunately, Yasuo's E resets a few seconds of Yasuo's Q when it's about to come off cooldown. That split second of when your Q is up the moment you E is the only time frame you have to pull off this combo. Now of course, it's easier said than done, but with a bit of practice, your combos can change from this to this. Now that you've learnt the importance of extending your ults and the value of EQing before you ult, if we put both of them together, what we get is the sickest and flashiest combo you can do in League, and that is called the Beyblade combo. Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip! Let's fight! Okay, hear me out. I'm not talking about the anime, and no one is going to let it rip unless you have gas. Then go to the toilet. That's gross. I'm talking about the coolest thing you can do and impress all of your friends in school or at work. And if you don't have friends or a job, that's fine, because who needs friends and a job when you can be cool? The Beyblade combo is basically combining the first 2 combos I showed you into one. Basically, what you do is get your whirlwind ready, you EQ, and during the animation, you flash in the direction of the targets to knock up the targets. Put in one auto attack, EQ again on the targets or any other targets around you, and then R the moment you EQ. This is by far the hardest, flashiest, and most damage efficient way you can solo kill anyone or your laner. Combining everything you've learned and applying it into this combo is really what makes Yasuo Yasuo. And if you are able to pull any of this without any trouble, then you, my friend, are better than me at Yasuo, because it took me 2 years to perfect that combo. And yes, I suck, but it might be different for you, so just practice and you'll be great. Yasuo was the first champion I got Mastery 7 with back in 2019, and he also was the first champion I got the legendary skin with. I really like Yasuo as a person because he really reminds me of myself. While he might be very arrogant and stubborn sometimes, at the end of the day, he just wants to do good by his people. This is the first time I've done a video like this, and it was a lot of fun, and I've never really thought that giving people information on something and giving my own takes would be so time consuming in a good way. I hope this guide was able to show you some hidden insights on how to play Yasuo, or just give you a good laugh. I'll go back to my normal vids in the next one, but if you want more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe, and comment if you want more league related content like this. My Discord and Twitter links will be in the description, so feel free to drop by. This was my juicy guide, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.